Hello everyone. In this episode, we're going to break down Thor Love and Thunder. Jumping right in, we immediately pick up with Gorr's origin, which is pretty accurate to the comics. Instead of having a son, however, he now has a daughter, who is actually played by the daughter of Chris Hemsworth. The markings on them both seem to be a part of their religion, since throughout the film, we see the ones on Gorr become marked out and scarred, further showing his distaste for the gods. The sword he finds is known as the Necro Sword. While in this movie it's connected to the Shadow Realm, in the comics it was owned by a man named Null, the symbiote deity. But since Sony owns the rights to the Venom characters and symbiotes, unfortunately, they had to work around this movie and make his abilities a little more shadow-like. The god Gorr once believed in and kills first is named Rapu, who actually bled gold, just like the others the team fights later in the film at Omnipotent City. Clearly, since it was the gold coloring, you can tell the director Taika had a field day anytime he wanted someone to bleed. Otherwise, it would have been removed. Within the MCU intro, we get our first Ms. Marvel appearance within the R. Another new hero who was recently added is Moon Knight on the far left. As we go through the shots of him aging up, we not only see an extremely comic accurate version of Thor's classic costume, but the youngest version of himself is played by one of Chris Hemsworth's sons, making two of his kids appear in the same film. Speaking of the comics, we see that while Thor gets back in shape, he's changed his hat to say Thor Strongest Avenger, the first of many callbacks to his last film Ragnarok, where he gave himself this title. Before scribbling it out, the hat was actually a direct reference to the older Avengers comics and lineup. During the montage, we see a werewolf/lichen as one of Thor's previous flings. This supernatural element may be a hint to the Marvel project Werewolf by Night that we'll be seeing later this year, or maybe even a reference to the upcoming Blade movie. It could also be a callback to Hela's wolf Fenrir we saw in Ragnarok. Funny enough, it turns out the actress in that scene is Chris Hemsworth's wife. Just like how in Thor the Dark World she had to fill in the role of Jane Foster in the post-credit scene. I mean, we're really getting all of the family in this film, and this isn't even the last one. When we pick up with modern day Thor, he rips Stormbreaker out of the ground with fresh roots dangling from the handle. Considering Groot helped make Stormbreaker back in Infinity War, it's reasonable to suggest that it could grow into something more wild planted. Thor's first outfit appears to be made out of a Ravager jacket, most likely one of Peter Quill's, aka Star-Lord, before he donned Yondu's. The new look even takes inspiration from the Thunderstrike outfit in the comics. And before this, he can be seen wearing the same armor he left with back in Avengers Endgame, with the longer beard and all. When we catch up with Jane, she's explaining her research to another patient reading her book. This is actually quite similar to how Thor explained his knowledge of science and magic to her back in the first film. Their friends Darcy and Eric Selvig also make cameos during these scenes. After suiting up as the Mighty Thor, we see Jane in a pretty comic accurate outfit. This is ultimately what makes Thor decide to change his into what is seemingly inspired by the Rune King armor in the comics. Lady Sif also gets an accurate costume upgrade, although we only see it for a short time. Within New Asgard, one of the newest attractions is an ice cream shop called Infinity Cones, with a huge infinity gauntlet on it. Another shop is called the Black Raven, referencing Odin's classic ravens he used for intel. These two actually made a sneaky appearance back in the very first Avengers movie, which is one of my favorite Easter eggs of all time. both Matt Damon and Chris Hemsworth's brother Luke made another appearance like they did in Ragnarok, along with Sam Neill as Odin, and this time accompanied by Melissa McCarthy as Hela. They even come back later this film to plan their next play. Supposedly, one of the deleted scenes was going to have the Grand Master come back. I wonder if he would have been one of Gore's many targets that were cut out of the film. Someone who did come back is Daryl, a surprising character from the Team Thor promo, which explained what exactly Thor was doing around the time of Captain America's Civil War. Back then, they were just roommates, so it appears that maybe Thor helped land him a job as one of the new tour guides. I'm sure he did learn a lot from their time together. When checking out all of the distress calls on the Guardian ship, some of them are taken directly out of the comics. The most notable one being the gods that are left hanging, as it's basically a direct image taken from the source material. The long handshake they share before going separate ways references the story of Loki that was told back in Ragnarok. This is about where he turned into a snake to trick Thor when they were younger. The death of Valagar, who was Thor's friend, is also an image basically taken straight from the comics. Like, it's quite literally almost an exact mirror of the panel. I don't know about you, but I love when the films go all out like this and really appreciate where it all started. Also ripped out of the comics are Gore's helpers, known as the Black Berserkers. I think it was revealed that Taika let his kids draw the monsters, since he wanted them to have crazy shapes and bodies, but don't quote me on that. Within the flashbacks of their relationship, we see Nick Fury calling. However, the contact name is typed as Fury, something Thor actually questioned back with Daryl in that Team Thor story. We even see Mjolnir sitting on the couch in those flashbacks. So now I'm wondering if you could slide that cushion out to move it? Or maybe flip the couch over and it move? I'm a little confused on how the physics work still, even at this fourth movie. It's revealed the reason Jane can lift Mjolnir is because Thor essentially updated Odin's enchantment, now that he's gone and has gained the ability to do so, although it was by accident. Too bad we didn't get to see Cap or Vision get some sick armor too, though, when they wielded it. The joke about how long it's been since they broke up could actually be because she was blipped for 5 years while Thor wasn't. That's why they both have very different numbers. When we see Valkyrie again, she can be seen wearing a Phantom of the Opera t-shirt as they create a plan to stop Gore. It's just cool to assume that it's one of her favorite Earth films since she's moved to the planet. Similarly, Heimdall's son takes up the name Axl, after Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses, whose music we clearly hear throughout the entire film. He even projects Thor's consciousness to their location like his dad did back in Ragnarok. During this planning phase, Thor mentions Hercules as someone he'd like to team up with. Funny how that turned out. Jane's experimental catchphrase, "Eat my hammer," is also brought up here before coming back during the final fight. The ship they end up using to travel has a neon sign which reads "Cocktails and Dreams," which is taken from the movie Cocktails starring Tom Cruise. Pretty sure this basically confirms Superior Iron Man in the MCU, but you didn't hear that from me. One of my favorite moments is when Gore hilariously plays with the eel and scares the children. Not only was it just funny, but it actually shows more on how the Necro Sword was manipulating him, considering he was upset about his daughter in the first place and seemingly cares about kids. The Panther Goddess boss makes an appearance in front of the team in Omnipotent City. She's also the sister of Khonshu, who we met in Moon Knight. Too bad we didn't get to see him in this movie though. But in this city, there are hundreds of gods we can take a look at. Some of the easier ones to spot are the Dragon God, which is possibly a reference to Shang-Chi. The line about a carpentry god is supposed to be about Jesus, similar to how Russell Crowe was originally going to play Satan, as revealed by concept art. The Dumpling God may be a nod at the Pixar short film Bao. And Korg's god of the Cronin sits on a throne, which seems very similar to the one in Game of Thrones, except this time it's made of scissors. This one is just a running joke on how rock beats scissors, and how in Ragnarok, Korg's revolution failed due to a lack of pamphlets, aka paper. Other than those, a couple of smaller celestials can be seen through the window once the team escapes. The interesting new tattoos on Thor's back consist of the words Rip Loki with his signature helmet, the word Brothers, the phrase Rest in Mischief, a broken heart, a moon, a rose, and a scroll that reads Mother, Father, Heimdall, Loki, she possibly has a question mark next to it, Tony, and Natasha. As Gore reaches the Statue of Eternity, there's numerous other cosmic beings surrounding him. I covered them all and their roles within the universe in my trailer breakdown. The only other time eternity has somewhat been mentioned is in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, when Peter Quill says he sees eternity and his eyes light up in a similar fashion to the form eternity has. And I think we can all agree that the Shadow Realm was a very cool place to visit, especially with the way only bits of color would show when they use some of their weapons and abilities. But just like with Hela and Ragnarok, Thor still hasn't learned that you can't just Bifrost away from the enemy without them messing with your exit. As Thor uses Zeus's lightning bolt and his newfound enchantment ability, he gives the kids temporary powers, and as he does so, it creates the shape of a tree, which reminded me of the World Tree or the Tree of Life, or even a family tree, since a lot of the film revolves around love and family. Speaking of family, when Axel leaves with the other kids, he turns Stormbreaker to activate the Bifrost, the same way his dad would with the sword, which was a nice little callback. Among the group of kids, a Lycan kid gets a speaking role, who could technically be Thor's kid depending on when he met with that wolf woman. Jane riding into the final battle on Valkyrie's Pegasus may be foreshadowing her potential comeback as a Valkyrie, like in the comics after her death, which the post-credit scene may be setting up. The realm where eternity lies looks a lot like where Thanos ended up after obtaining the Soul Stone, and where Tony ended up in that deleted scene from Endgame, with the simplistic surrounding and water flooring. Once resurrected and left with some abilities of eternity, Gore's daughter may have become the cosmic being known as Love. This means we may follow the journey of a new cosmic being in the MCU as she finds her own place in the universe. Maybe, given her history, she'll be more hands-on in helping to others as compared to the gods we've seen this film. And now we never quite find out what Jane whispers as she dies, but Thor thinks it's perfect. This probably means it's, say, something corny, or maybe something we heard before in the film. Either way, Natalie Portman refuses to reveal what it was, but hopefully we'll get to find out eventually. Korg's boyfriend's name is Dwayne, which is surely a play on Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. They even teased having a kid, which will be the next chapter in their story, and who we'll potentially meet in the next film. At the end of the movie, we see Love reading Jane's book. Thor even makes the same pancakes for her that he once made for Jane in the flashbacks. In these scenes, it's also a lot more clear to see that Thor has the black hair braided strand once again. And then, ending the film, Thor gets rid of the bright colors from his armor for a more simplistic black and gold look, He even chooses to drown on Mjolnir, while Love races into battle with him wielding Stormbreaker. This clearly gives the title of the film a whole new and more literal meaning, as Sweet Child of Mine plays like in the trailers. This song and the title of the movie basically told us from the start how things were going to end, which, believe me when I say, that was a twist I was not expecting. But what did you think? Did you enjoy this movie? Comment your thoughts below and anything I missed, because I'd love to hear it. And if you're interested in the post-credit scenes, I broke them down in another video. But yeah, that's that. See ya.